Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today, I am talking to Miesha Louie of Miesha and the Spanks. As any fan knows, this Calgary garage rock duo have always packed a solid punch. But to their considerable credit, they just released the hardest hitting album of their career. That would be their new LP, Unconditional Love in Hi-Fi, which finds singer-guitarist and band leader Louie digging deep and getting personal with songs about the death of her father, the generational trauma of residential schools, trying to balance new motherhood with career, her work with a rock camp for girls, and tons more. Even better, she and drummer Sean Hamilton paired all those weighty lyrics with some of the band's heaviest songs to date. A few days before the album dropped and the Spanks got back on the road, Miesha zoomed in to discuss Unconditional Love, the joys of drop D tuning, Game of Thrones podcasts, and plenty more. Enjoy. Hello, Miesha Louie. How are you doing today?
How are you doing?
I am good. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's nice to meet you too.
Yeah. So I got to tell you, I am blown away by the new album. I think it's the best thing you've ever done.
Thank you. I hope so. That's kind of always trying to do better than what we've done before. And yeah, we definitely are feeling that way about this record too. We're really excited to get it out there and see what happens.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you about that because it does feel very consciously like you were trying to take it into a new place. There some of these songs are different. They're more ambitious. They're very powerful. Obviously, you're digging deep personally. You've got these between song, I don't know what you want to call them, vignettes or spoken word. Yeah. Was this something that, was obviously it was a very conscious thing for you, but how did you sort of go from turning, intention into results in that way?
I think a lot of it was, we're always just trying to do something bigger and better. And something that we were not afraid to do on this record was to do more than maybe we knew at the time how to do live. That is something that we always take into the studio with us. Like, we want to add too many extra things because what if that's somebody's favorite part and we can't do that live? So we always kind of think about that when we go in the studio. But this time we were like, we want to make a really big record. Like, we want it to sound huge. And you know what? We'll figure it out. We'll figure out how to do it live later and we'll just make the record. So I think that really allowed us some room to be really creative and try out some new things and see how that works. And I think we've been starting to kind of play a few things into the set. Tour starts tomorrow. So there's some things never played live before that are going to be happening. And we've been jamming it and working on it. And I think that we've got it. Like, we're trying to stay away from extra band members and tracks. And I think we've got it.
Mission accomplished in terms of what you set out to achieve on the record. And that's just got to open the doors completely for you now, right?
I hope so. Yeah. I hope that it kind of puts us into another tier of our success and what we've been able to accomplish so far in Canada and abroad, and brings us some more opportunities that we haven't been able to quite hit yet. And yeah, I think that's kind of what the goal is, always to be doing more and trying new things.
Oh, for sure. But I was thinking musically, if you go into the studio now, just going, well, we can do anything in here.
Oh, yeah.
And then figure it out. You can have bagpipes and horn sections and, or write 17-minute rock operas or whatever the hell strikes your fancy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If we want to go that big, we might need to think about having some guests on stage with us. But this level of big was good. And honestly, we always do that to ourselves, put ourselves in situations where we are challenging ourselves and figuring out how are we going to do this live. And so, yeah, we did this much on this record. We'll probably do more on the next record because what else is there to do, right? We have to keep kind of building it up.
Yeah. So this was done, there's a few different sessions that sort of you put together, right, to create this. Yes. It wasn't all done in one piece. So
Dig Me Out and I Can't Wait were both done in the UK. We were doing some festivals kind of when things were opening up after COVID, but then they kind of closed down again. So we had 3 festivals in Europe and they're just on the weekends. So we were like, well, what are we going to do with this time in between? So we called up Danny and Paul, who produced Girls, Girls, Girls for us in Brighton. And we're like, well, we've got 2 new songs. Let's go record them. And then when we were doing that, it was just so awesome to be working with them again that we were like, there's no way that this is just 2 songs. Like now we have to figure out the rest of the record. So those 2 singles came out much earlier than the record because we had finished them and we wanted to get them out there. I think they were both out before we had done the next round of recording for the album. Because then in April, so that was September 21, April 22, we went into the studio at National Music Center and did 4 more songs. We thought we would finish the record then, but we just there's so much stuff to play with in National Music Center. And the way that we work with Danny and Paul is very collaborative. And we just got having so much fun experimenting with everything that we had at our fingertips that we were not finishing 1 song in a day. And we're like, well, we're not going to finish 8 songs in 5 days at this rate. So we're like, you know what, it's fine. We'll bring you out again. So we did about 4.5 songs at National Music Center, brought them back in August 2022 and finished 5 more tracks at OCL Studios just outside of the city here in Calgary. So it was really cool to be able to spread out over all the different studios and use what they had to their disposal and focus on short amounts of songs every time we were in a new space, and like not be on like a schedule, like all drums done today. Now we got to work with all guitars. Like it was expensive, but we had a lot of freedom to really work on these songs. And I think that also made a big difference for the end result of the album.
What is it about Dan Ferrant and Paul Rawson that made you want to go back and work with them again? Because you worked with Ian Blurton before and Leroy Stagger, and
Yeah.
so what was the connection like with these guys that made you go, no, we have to repeat this process?
Well, with Girls, 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 we really learned so much from them while we were in the studio with them about like songwriting and arrangement and even playing guitar and playing drums. Like Danny is a really phenomenal drummer, and to have him be there producing drums gave Sean so much room to like learn new things and new sounds. And for me on guitar, like I was still relatively new to electric guitar. Like I'd been touring and stuff, but very simplified stuff. And Paul is an amazing guitar player and kind of helped me elaborate on the riffs I was trying to play. That's kind of when we made the switch to mostly drop D type music. So we learned so much from them, and we all in that session. It was so cool when we did Girls, Girls, Girls. And then when we came, then we would like apply all that stuff to our later writings, right? So it kind of stuck with us over the years. And then we went back to work with them to just do those 2 songs, which were it really was just kind of like killing some time while we were overseas when we started that. But when we were there, it was like they saw how much we'd grown. So they were like, okay, cool. Now we can start like doing even bigger things and figuring out new arrangements. And we weren't in the position where we were like new and they were teaching us. We were in a position where we were all really good at what we did, so we could grow so much more from there. And I think just how everything went down, how we finished those songs while we were in Brighton, like that was the decision that we like needed to do a full album with these guys again and see how much more we could do now that we were just better at what we were doing in general.
Right. Talking about guitar playing, I mean, looking at some of your videos, it looks to me like you're playing in an open tuning, you've tuned to a chord, right?
Yeah, everything is in drop D now.
Yeah.
It makes it difficult to go back to some of the older songs that are not in drop D, because I have a full setup on my guitar with way heavier strings in the beginning, and to play like open chording sounds weird if I turn it into a standard tuning now. But yeah, we're all drop D, and I mean that just kind of helps lend to playing through the 3 amps, having the low end through the bass amp, along with an octave pedal. But everything, yeah, just drop D makes us have more room as a 2-piece.
But it's also, I guess it makes it easier in terms of when you're on stage that, you don't have to, it's all kind of, simplified to a certain degree. So you can, because you're doing a lot of the lifting.
I am doing a lot, and I don't get to like leave the microphone very often. So it's like, yeah, I do try to keep things as easy as possible for all of the many things that we're trying to pull off.
Yeah. Is that how, I mean, when you first started playing guitar, though, I'm guessing you learned the regular tuning and, doing all the chords and all that. So is it a big adjustment to sort of simplify it and strip it down like that?
When I switched to drop D, I didn't know what drop D was. So we actually did that when we were doing Stranger EP, which was with Danny and Paul, and those songs ended up on Girls, 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 but we were working remotely with them. So they were producing from England. We were at OCL Studios here in Calgary. And they were like, yeah, this song is cool, but you should try it in drop D. And I was like, sure. And so I put everything.
Yeah, I know what that is. Yeah.
A D scale and played it in like a D scale. And they were like, And it's just also like the time is different, right? So we do things in the day, send it to them. It's night for us, it's day for them. And we get the feedback like when we wake up. So the next day they were like, do you like not want to do drop D? What's the problem with drop D? And I was like, shit. Okay, I guess I don't know what it is. You guys are gonna have to send me a tutorial. Like, I don't even know what it is you're asking me to do. So, I mean, like that was like a huge learning curve, just even figuring out how to do that. My knowledge of guitar prior to that was I was playing acoustic guitar for more singer-songwriter type stuff, just enough that I could write music. And I always sang in my rock and punk bands. But when I started Miesha and the Spanks, I wanted to have a band that was just whatever I wanted to do, and band members could come and go and I wouldn't have to restart the whole thing. So that meant I had to start playing guitar. And so I switched to electric, but I didn't like, I played it like it was an acoustic. Like I didn't really know all of the differences because I wasn't someone who just grew up playing guitar in my bedroom. I did, but not to the extent of I was learning how to shred from rock and roll magazines or anything like that. So I had years to catch up on, and I just kind of slowly learned, playing with other bands and watching what they were doing and figuring out like that. Ian Blurton was a huge step up as well, working with him. Obviously, he's a huge shredder, so he kind of gave me some pointers and put me in the right direction. But I feel like now playing guitar is where I've been trying to get to all of this time. And that was just a lot of trial and error to figure out how to get there.
Yeah, and I bet it's interesting too to start writing songs in this new tuning, and everything's kind of, it makes
Yeah.
the instrument fresh, right?
Yes, everything is new. And so then everything that you stumble upon sounds like a great idea. Like it's all very exciting. So it's yeah, it's been fun for that.
Yeah, and again, I love the lyrics on this. I mean, you're obviously very personal stuff, very deep stuff. I've heard you talk in the past about how it kind of took you some time to warm up to this way of writing songs and get into it. Is it getting easier, or is it still kind of pulling teeth every time?
It's getting a lot easier. And I think a lot of that was from the positive response, like really writing songs about my Indigenous identity and my family's history. I would say starting with Mixed Blood Girls when I decided to do that, and that was pulling teeth, and that was really difficult to write and put out there because I was just so worried I would be under scrutiny, and that, my experience doesn't matter in the grander scheme of things. There are so many more important Indigenous topics than feeling displaced being mixed and stuff. And so the response was massive. Like so many people related to that. And I was like, wow, like, okay, this does matter. Somebody else will get something out of this. So why not pull from all of these things I hardly even speak about? Like I have all of this other lived experience from this part of myself that like people in the city don't necessarily know, but in my hometown where all my family's from, that's relevant. But here in Calgary, it hasn't been as big of a part of who I am on the outside because I don't know, I guess it was maybe easier not to, but it's complicated. But anyway, pulling from that has been really awesome and really good for me. Like I've been feeling so much better being able to just openly be myself and say my feelings and my experiences.
Is it therapeutic? Is it cathartic? Does it
Yeah,
lighten
I
your
would say it is. Yeah, because these are things that that I've kind of had bottled a little bit, and would come out here and there if I was feeling really strongly about something, but wasn't a part of my day to day. And there is this real peace that comes with just being openly myself. And that, yeah, it's definitely therapeutic. And that when there's so many things going on in your life and life is so busy, if you can just ground yourself and just be you, like that's what's been a real lifesaver as things get more crazy around here.
Yeah. And thank you for writing songs about motherhood that aren't just sappy, wimpy, oh, I love my children songs,
Yeah. Yeah. Mom Jeans was an idea for a long time. And I wrote one version of it and Sean listened to it and he's like, but is this like a joke? Like, are we making a joke about this? Or like, because we're not really a joke, like a joke punk band where, and that was kind of the way that it was coming out. And I was like, okay, all right, I guess I can be a bit more real about this. And I'm glad I bounced that off him and had a chance to, because like, I mean, yeah, it's like, it's laughable. It's funny, the adjustments that we make in our lives and however we choose to deal with them once we become moms. But like, and kids they're hilarious. Like the really like bad times they're laughable. You have to laugh or you would go crazy. So like,
Well, and enough is kind of about the twin pull, right?
yeah. And yeah, balancing all of the I mean, all of the hats I've been trying to wear for a while now, and then adding motherhood to that is really tough. Like I definitely had growing our team this year and adding Mint Records, and we have a manager now with Carly from Victory Pool. I'm like, take some things off my plate because I need to like focus on music and being a mom, and the business stuff is like somebody else can do that. Nobody else can do those other two things for me. So like if I'm going to take something off my plate, it's got to be that. And that's been like a dream. And I'm still really involved, I think, because I always will be, because I grew this myself and have always been doing every job in Miesha and the Spanks. And so I'm still in it, but like, I don't need to worry about missing like applications for things or writing grants anymore. And somebody else is helping me manage the release cycle. And I can just, actually play music in my garage and hang out with my kids. And it's really nice.
Have you found motherhood changing you as an artist, changing the way you think about what you're writing or the way you write?
Yeah, I think, I mean, and running Girls Rock Camp also had a bit of a impact on that. As soon as I started incorporating like youth are listening to my songs, like kids are listening to my songs, and I'm playing a role model to somebody, then like maybe I'm not going to write about doing shots of Jameson's anymore. And like maybe I'm not going to like and partying all night. Like maybe those have a place, and partying is great, but maybe I will kind of stray away from some of the stuff I wrote about when I was a bit younger and stuff. And I care more about writing meaningful things. And I want like a big part also of working with my Indigenous identity is having that available to my kids, like trying to get my kids involved in my culture. So I care about writing things that will be open to them. And also these are just things that are on my mind now. So that's changing what I'm writing about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think definitely when you start thinking about who's listening, it does affect what you're putting out there. And there's still like a ton of stuff to write about that isn't like shots of Jameson's.
I think they're a little more serious. The songs themselves bring the party anyway. So you got
Yeah.
covered there, right? I'm glad you brought up the Girls Rock Camp too, because I think that is so cool that you're doing that. What is the most important thing that you think you're teaching these girls?
I think like confidence is a really big thing, and just that they can do it, they can try. I feel like less and less it's like this for kids their age compared to when I was a kid, but it was a very big boys club, and there was nobody that you could look to that wasn't like a superstar. So kind of an unrealistic role model, that like no women in rock and punk that were readily available for you to look to and learn from, whether or not you go to a camp run by them, but you see them at a show or you see them around your town or something like that. Like it becomes more realistic because you see yourself represented. So I think the biggest thing is like that they can see like that's a real person who's playing music for a living. Like that means that I can do that. And even if they're not even looking at it as a professional standpoint, it's like they're getting up there and saying something, and they're putting themselves in these really high pressure situations, the girls, where the camp only runs like 4 days, and then they're in the studio on the 5th day, and then they're performing live on the 6th day.
Wow.
And so within 4 days, and you don't have to know how to play any instruments. Like we walk you through how to play drums for the first time, or bass or guitar, enough so you can write a song and learn a cover in a simplified version. And so it's like, I mean, they inspire me all the time, because I'm like, God, would I do well in like a boot camp situation like this? Like they're doing it, and they show me every time that, yeah, you can. So as much as I'm trying to represent like that, yes, this is something that you could do, like they're showing me all the time that you can do it as well. Like it's kind of this awesome cycle. And you just kind of see them come out of their shells a lot. Like really, really shy girls at the start, sometimes really overly confident girls who kind of figure out how to ground themselves more. And sometimes girls that are super scared, and then they're belting it out on stage come performance day. And
Which one were you? Were you the shy girl or the overly confident girl?
I'm shy. I totally am. Like I'm getting a lot better at talking with people. And I mean, like, I should hope so by now that I'm better at it, but definitely in my earlier performing years, I wouldn't talk much on stage. I would always be very confident, open while I'm performing, while I'm in that moment. But when it comes to like the talking to people from the stage, talking to people after the show, or just networking in general, like, yeah, I would be like quietly sipping my beer and nodding along for sure.
Did you have anybody who could mentor you when you were first starting out, or did you just have to kind of brace yourself and throw yourself into the deep waters.
Yeah, I just had to do it. I mean, I grew up in a super small town in Vermeer. It's like 3,000 population. And so we put on the punk shows in our community hall. And by me, I mean me and like 4 other guys who played in bands together and in my band. And we would do that. And I had to just dive in because there wasn't anything else going on in my hometown. And yeah, I kind of just learned from my peers. When I moved to Calgary, there was a band called Honey Rocket, and Therese Lons, who's in Mares of Thrace. I don't know if you've heard them. She didn't maybe mean to mentor me, but I followed her around like a puppy dog, like, because she was the coolest woman I'd ever met, who played like really dirty, dark rock and roll. And she was playing a little more on the punk rock side back then before she went like really heavy. And like, I definitely followed her around, watched what she did. She would like talk to me about what she was doing still when I wasn't too shy to ask. And I learned so much from her. And that was my first experience with like a real girl playing rock and roll that I could actually talk to and see and go to a show.
Yeah, I love the song title, Girls Are Okay, which turns into Girls Rock. It was one of those things where I went, that is so brilliant. I can't believe nobody came up with that one before.
Yeah, I mean, God, they inspire me so much.
Oh yeah, totally. Geez, where was I going? I had something else that I wanted to ask you right as a follow-up for that, and it went straight out of my head. Isn't that so you guys have been a duo forever. What is it about the two-person thing that works for you, that you want to stick with it?
It makes touring really easy, just the two of us. We can fly out east and just rent some stuff, and that's like not a big deal. But I think it also has to do with like who the two people are. Like me and Sean are such a great unit, and we both have the same aspirations and goals with music. So it's very easy. I can count on him to probably say yes to everything unless something major is going on that he has another commitment. Like I can say yes to festivals. We can just make it work and go do it. And we're always thinking about the next thing. And it's just great to have a bandmate like this. Like I've had a lot of other bandmates leading up to it. Sean started playing with me, I think in 2015, I want to say. And prior to that, it was always kind of short term, and it was always me leading, and often it would be a band member switch because I was asking to do too many things. And the whole reason I started this band was so I could say yes to everything and just try to build a career. So having Sean there makes a big difference. Now that we have this like awesome dynamic, and things have been from 2015 to now have been like our most progressive years where we've done the most stuff easily. So I don't want to like mess with this at all. So that's also one reason we have a great dynamic. We're like similar personalities, and we bring in sometimes our photographer, videographer, Sebastian Buzzolino will come and do like amazing photos and videos for us while we're on the road. And he's a great fit. And we're like, okay, this is a good 3. I don't think we want to add anybody else. Sometimes my husband comes and works merch. He's a good addition to the mix as well. But now that we have the boys, it's like, we can't both go. So it doesn't happen very often anymore.
But that's the secret, isn't it? I mean, you can find a lot of people to be in a band with, but it's hard to find somebody that you can be in a van with for like.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. Like, yeah, we've done huge drives across Canada, and we don't like get sick of each other unless he's just very politely not letting me know he's sick of me. But like, I think we've been doing pretty good.
Are you saying you're a lot? Is that what you're getting at?
No. Just like, well, maybe when we would drive across Canada, I think it was like the 2018-ish tour when Game of Thrones was really big. We were both really into it, but I was maybe more into it. And we listened to a lot of Game of Thrones podcasts where I would argue with the podcast a lot. If there was a time he was ever sick of me, maybe it was then.
Oh man, making him listen to Game of Thrones podcast. No,
he also likes Game of Thrones, so it's not like
it's
something he didn't watch or anything.
All right. So have you already got stuff lined up to listen to with the band on this track?
Oh, no, we're pretty scattered right now. I haven't even started packing for tomorrow yet. I'm not sure what we're going to be listening to, but we do have like, it's kind of in chunks. Like we've got Nelson, Vancouver, Kelowna, Rossland, and then we're home for a night. So I feel like these first little batch of dates, we're going to be a little like on the seat of our pants, kind of just figuring it out as we go along. And we'll probably make plans for the next chunk when we go out to Winnipeg and back. And then in May, when we go to Eastern Canada, I think we'll be like really prepared for that.
All right.
We haven't done tours in a while, so it's kind of like all the things we used to prepare for it I kind of forgot about.
Oh yeah, it's all fresh again, huh?
Yeah.
And that album title, Unconditional Love and Hi-Fi, does that relate to motherhood? Is that where the unconditional love comes from? Or
Yeah, and identity, and just like I was trying to think of what we were gonna call it, and I was like, I don't think any of the song titles wraps up the whole album, because there are like, we're hitting on a lot of different things. And so we were kind of lingering around unconditional love for a while. And then I was thinking about how big this album is now, like how the production is so big. And I was like, it should be like, yeah, like unconditional love, like in hi-fi.
yeah.
Like old records are like this thing in hi-fi. We were trying, that's kind of where we we're pulling from. But I think unconditional love just kind of wraps up the whole album. I mean, there's different themes throughout, but ultimately it's all kind of resolving around being cool with where you're at and your identity and what's happening in your life right now. And I think loving yourself unconditionally and your situation.
Yeah, and I mean, again, so many. I love the fact that you start with "Dig Me Up," because that first line, it just hits you right in the face. That is such a great opening track.
Thanks. Yeah, the interlude, I was kind of messing around with what I was going to do for it in a while. And I was like, yeah, when we did Dig Me Out, I think shortly before we released it, the Pope did apologize, but not at the time we recorded it. So putting the apology into that remix, I felt like a good starting point. Like if we were going to start the album with Dig Me Out with a heavy song like that, then let's like really dive into it and have the apology at the start.
Yeah, it's just such a great opening line, which is, because you think of classic albums and they have these great first lines, and that is one for the ages, I think. And then, are you guys doing Bear Kids?
Yes, that is one song where we will have a track to. I was thinking it would be difficult for me to say that every time I perform it, like the
I was
speaking
going to say,
verses.
connecting back to it every night would seem to be hard.
I think it would be really emotionally draining. So the plan for that is, and we're actually going to jam this out today because Sean made the tracks, I think pretty much after this interview. We're going to have a track that has the verses. So I'll just play guitar for that and come in on the choruses. And also the jingle dancing will be on the track as well. Although we're hoping to have Sherry come and dance at the Calgary release show.
Cool. Well, that'll be exciting to see. And I love that. I think I saw somewhere you mentioned that you love Amyl and the Sniffers.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, great band.
They are really good.
Yeah, who else are you listening to these days? Whether it's somebody new or something old that you've just discovered.
I mean, I love Starring Those Res Kids. Yeah, although I'm still kind of on Trapline. I know they've got like much newer stuff out, and we just saw them at New Colossus while we were in New York, and they played some of the newer songs. I'm like, okay, I've got to make sure I get those albums. I'm kind of the person who gets stuck in one album for a really long time and just listens to it like nonstop. So that Starring Those Res Kids Trapline is still in rotation for me. What else am I listening to right now? You know what? I listen to the radio a lot. Like I end up having to listen to a lot of background noise. So like Underground Garage on Sirius XM is on pretty nonstop in my house right now. There's some cool new stuff by the Dolly Rots that I'm really enjoying on that. That keeps popping up. And
another rock duo.
Yeah. Yes, they are a duo, aren't they?
Yeah,
But I think they hire on extra band members when they play live, though.
I would think, yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of it. You know what? I don't really get a lot of time to listen to a record anymore. So that's why it is. Yeah. So like the radio really is it.
All right. Well, listen, I think I've taken up enough of your time. You've got a million things to do, obviously. So I will let you go and say thanks so much for your time. Thanks for the new album again. I think this album should be like issued to like every girl who goes to like junior high school. Immediately they just hand you this album and go, here, this is what you need.
That's pretty cool. Thank you. That's awesome.
All right. Well, listen, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.